Store 47 had been vacant for months, but every night at 3 a.m., the lights would turn on and I'd hear children laughing inside. My name is Marcus, and I've been working mall security for 8 years. I thought I'd seen everything: shoplifters, medical emergencies, the occasional drunk teenager. But what happened during my time at Westfield Commons still keeps me awake at night. I started working there last spring, when they were desperately short-staffed. The mall was dying, with more empty storefronts than active businesses. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., patrolling the corridors alone. Most nights, it was just me and the silence. Store 47 was right in the center of the main corridor. It had been a children's toy store called Wonderworld, until it closed 6 months before I started. The space was completely empty. No inventory, no fixtures, just bare walls and industrial carpeting. But from my first week on the job, Store 47 was a problem. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., the lights in Store 47 would turn on by themselves. Not gradually, not flickering, they'd just snap on all at once, illuminating the empty space. I reported it to maintenance. They checked everything, replaced switches, installed new timers. Nothing worked. Every single night, 3:13 a.m., the lights would turn on. After about 2 weeks, I started hearing sounds coming from inside when the lights turned on. Children's voices, laughing, playing, having conversations. The kind of sounds you'd expect from a toy store during business hours, not from an empty storefront at 3 a.m. The first time I heard children laughing inside Store 47, I did a full sweep of the space, completely empty. All entrances secure. No sign that anyone had been inside, but I definitely heard kids playing in there. The pattern was always the same. Lights would turn on at 3:13, and within minutes I'd hear children's voices and laughter. The sounds would continue for about 20 minutes, then fade away. When I'd check the store, it was always empty. After a month of this, I positioned myself outside Store 47 before 3:13 a.m. and waited. At exactly 13, the lights snapped on, and immediately, I heard a child's voice say, "Can you help me find my mommy?" The voice was coming from right inside the store, maybe 10 feet away. A little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sounding lost and scared. I entered the store. "Hello? Is someone in here?" "We can't find the exit," another voice said. "A boy, slightly older." "The lights went out and we got lost," said a third voice. I was standing in an empty store, having a conversation with invisible children. They sounded confused and frightened. "Where are you?" I called out. "We can't see you," the little girl replied. "It's too dark where we are." But the store was brightly lit. Every fluorescent bulb was on. I did some research the next day. 3 years earlier, there had been an electrical fire at Wonderworld during Christmas shopping season. In the power outage and confusion, 3 children had become separated from their parents and died of smoke inhalation in the store's back area. Emma, age 6, Tyler, age 8, and Sophia, age 5, had been found hours later, still waiting for help. That was at 3:13 a.m. The exact time the lights turned on every night. But here's where things got worse. As the weeks went on, the children's voices became more insistent. They started asking me to come play with them, to stay longer, to bring other people to meet them. "Marcus," Emma's voice would say, "why don't you ever come to where we are? We have games back here," Tyler would add. "Fun games. You could stay with us forever," Sophia would whisper. I started noticing that during these conversations, I felt drawn to move deeper into the store, like something was pulling me toward the back wall, even though there was nothing there, just empty space and concrete. The pull got stronger each night, and the children's voices became more demanding. "Come play with us, Marcus. Come to the dark place. Come where we are." Last week, I found myself walking toward the back of Store 47 without realizing it. The children were laughing, encouraging me, telling me I was getting warmer. I snapped out of it when I was standing with my face pressed against the back wall, my hands searching for a door that didn't exist. "That's not where we are," Emma's voice said, and she sounded different. Older, hungrier. "We're much deeper than that." I haven't been back to Store 47 since then. I've been avoiding that section of the mall entirely during my rounds. But I can hear them calling my name from other parts of the building now. And yesterday, I found muddy child-sized footprints leading from store 47 to the security office, where I spend most of my shift. The prints stop right outside my door. Tonight is my last shift at Westfield Commons. I'm quitting after this, but I can hear them now, even as I'm typing this report. 3 children's voices, echoing through the empty mall corridors, getting closer. Marcus, come play with us. We've been waiting so long. We're coming to find you. The lights in store 47 just turned on, even though it's only 2:30 a.m., and I can hear footsteps in the corridor outside. Small footsteps, coming this way. I don't think they're going to let me leave. My name is Sarah, and I worked the night shift at Oakwood Mall for 2 years before I realized I wasn't alone in the building. I'm 31, single mum, needed a job that let me be home during the day with my daughter. More security seemed perfect, quiet, easy work, decent pay for walking around an empty building all night. Oakwood Mall was typical for a place struggling in the modern retail environment. Half the stores were closed, foot traffic was minimal, and the atmosphere during the day was already pretty depressing. At night, it was just me and about 40,000 square feet of empty commercial space. My routine was simple: patrol each level twice per shift, monitor the security cameras, and respond to the occasional alarm from motion sensors that were probably triggered by mice or settling structures. The first few months were completely normal, boring even. I'd walk my routes, check my phone, count the hours until morning. The most excitement I got was chasing out the occasional homeless person who'd found a way inside. But around my 4th month, I started noticing things that didn't make sense, sounds that didn't belong. Not the normal creaking and settling of a large building, but specific sounds. Footsteps echoing from corridors I'd just finished patrolling. Store security gates, rattling, like someone was testing them. Music playing faintly from somewhere I couldn't locate. At first I assumed it was sound carrying from outside or from the few businesses that stayed open late near the mall. But the sounds were too clear, too obviously coming from inside the building. Then I started seeing things on the security cameras. Movement in the periphery of camera feeds, dark shapes walking through corridors, just at the edge of what the cameras could capture. When I'd switch to different camera angles to get a better view, there was never anything there. It happened often enough that I started questioning my own perception. Night shifts can mess with your head, make you see things that aren't there. But the movement was too consistent, too purposeful to be hallucinations. I began paying closer attention to the cameras during my shifts. What I discovered was a pattern. Every night between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., there was movement throughout the mall, figures walking through corridors, going in and out of closed stores, gathering in the food court area, always just out of clear camera range, always disappearing when I tried to get a better look. But they weren't random movements. The figures seemed to be following familiar routes, like they knew the mall layout perfectly. They moved with purpose, like they were conducting their own business in the building. I started doing research on Oakwood Mall's history. What I found explained a lot, but made the situation much more disturbing. Oakwood had opened in 1987, but it was built on the site of a much older structure, Oakwood General Hospital, which had operated from 1923 to 1985. The hospital had been demolished to make way for the mall, but the basement levels had been preserved and incorporated into the mall's foundation. The hospital had a dark history. It had been a tuberculosis treatment facility during the 1930s and 1940s when effective treatments didn't exist, and patients often spent years in isolation before dying. Hundreds of people had died in that building over the decades. But the really disturbing part was what I learned about the demolition. When they tore down the hospital in 1985, they discovered that the basement levels contained unmarked burial areas, where patients who died without family had been interred. The developers had quietly relocated most of the remains. But there were reports that some areas were left undisturbed due to structural concerns. So Oakwood Mall was literally built on top of a cemetery that most people didn't know existed. This knowledge changed how I interpreted what I was seeing on the cameras. The figures moving through the mall weren't random intruders. They were former patients of Oakwood General Hospital, still wandering the grounds that had once been their final home. I should have quit right then, but I needed the job. And honestly, I was curious. As long as they didn't directly interfere with my work, I figured I could coexist with whatever was haunting the mall. That was a mistake. The activity started escalating. Instead of just glimpses on cameras, I began encountering the figures directly during my patrols. I'd be walking through a corridor and see someone ahead of me, always just at the edge of my flashlight beam, always disappearing around corners before I could get a clear look. But they were definitely there, definitely aware of my presence. They started following me. I'd hear footsteps behind me during my rounds, always maintaining the same distance, always stopping when I stopped. When I'd turn around, there was nothing visible, but I could feel eyes watching me from the darkness. The worst part was the food court. It became a gathering place for them. I'd approach the area and hear dozens of voices, quiet conversations, like a crowd of people socializing. But when I'd enter the food court, it would fall silent and empty, except for the chairs. Every night, I'd find the food court chairs rearranged into circles, like people had been sitting together in groups. The chairs were always warm, like someone had just been sitting in them. Last month, things reached a breaking point. I was doing my 3 a.m. patrol when I heard something that made me freeze. A woman's voice calling my name. Not shouting, just a calm, clear voice saying Sarah from somewhere ahead of me in the corridor. I followed the voice, and it led me to the old Sears anchor store that had been closed for over a year. The voice was coming from inside the darkened store. Sarah, we've been waiting for you. The security gate was down and locked, but I could see movement inside the store, figures standing among the empty display racks, all facing toward where I was standing. Join us, Sarah. You belong here now. More voices joined in, dozens of them, all speaking in unison. Stay with us. Don't leave. You're one of us now. I ran back to the security office and stayed there for the rest of my shift, but they followed me. I could hear them outside the office, trying the door handle, whispering my name through the walls. And that was 3 weeks ago. Since then, they've been getting bolder. They don't hide anymore. I see them clearly during my patrols. Dozens of people in hospital gowns from different eras, walking through the mall like they own it. They watch me openly now, following me everywhere I go. And they're not just confined to the mall anymore. They've started appearing in the parking lot when I arrive for work, standing by my car when I leave in the morning. I even saw one in my apartment building hallway last week. The worst part is that I'm starting to understand them. When they whisper to me, it makes sense. They're lonely. They've been trapped in this place for decades, and they want company. They want me to stay with them permanently. And honestly, part of me wants to. I'm tired of my life outside the mall. Tired of struggling to pay bills. Tired of worrying about my daughter's future. Tired of feeling alone. The hospital patients are offering me something I've never had. A place where I belong, where I'm wanted. Tonight is different. They're not hiding or whispering anymore. They're waiting for me in the main corridor, dozens of them, all facing the security office, all smiling. I can hear my daughter's voice now,
Mama?
too. She's calling for me from somewhere
Mama?
deep in the mall. But that's impossible. She's at home with my mother. Unless they're showing me what could happen if I don't join them willingly. I have to go now. They're calling my name, and I can't ignore them anymore. If anyone finds this report, don't look for me in the mall. I won't be there. I'll be somewhere much deeper. The mannequins in Westfield Plaza started moving the night I took the job, and now I understand why the previous security guard disappeared. I'm Jake, 24, and I thought landing the night security job at Westfield Plaza was lucky. Good pay, easy work, just me and an empty mall from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The previous guard had quit suddenly without notice, so they were desperate to fill the position. I should have asked more questions about why he left. Westfield Plaza was one of those dying malls, half empty, struggling to stay relevant. The anchor store was Brennan's department store, which had closed 2 years earlier, but was still locked up with all the fixtures and inventory inside. Something about lease disputes and bankruptcy proceedings. My supervisor gave me a quick tour on my first night. Just walk the corridors every hour, monitor the cameras, and stay out of Brennan's, he said. The store is sealed pending legal resolution. What about the mannequins I can see in there? You paused. What about them? There are a lot of them. Looks creepy. Just don't worry about Brennan's. Focus on the active retail areas. That should have been my first warning. My first week was routine. I'd patrol the corridors, check the camera feeds, and spend most of my time in the security office reading or watching videos on my phone. The most exciting thing was chasing out a few teenagers who'd snuck in through a service entrance. But I kept finding myself looking at Brennan's during my rounds. The department store took up a huge section of the second level, and through the security grating, I could see dozens of mannequins still arranged in displays throughout the space. They were high-end mannequins, realistic faces, natural poses, expensive clothing. Even in the dim emergency lighting, they looked disturbingly lifelike. During my second week, I started noticing something odd about the mannequins. They seemed to be in different positions each night. At first, I thought I was just remembering wrong. There were so many of them, arranged in multiple displays throughout the large store, that it would be easy to confuse their positions. But I started paying closer attention. The mannequin family in the front window display, 2 adults and 2 children arranged around a dinner table, definitely moved. On Monday, they were all facing toward the mall corridor. On Tuesday, the adult figures were turned toward each other like they were having a conversation. On Wednesday, they were all facing toward the back of the store, but Brennan's was locked and sealed. No one had access except for the property management company, and they hadn't been inside for months. I started documenting the changes with my phone, taking pictures of the displays at the beginning and end of each shift. The evidence was undeniable. The mannequins were being moved regularly, but moved by who? I checked the security cameras that monitored the mall corridors. They showed no activity around Brennan's, no one entering or leaving, no maintenance workers, no property management visits. According to the cameras, the sealed store remained completely undisturbed, yet the mannequins continued moving. After 3 weeks of this, I decided to investigate more directly. I knew I wasn't supposed to enter Brennan's, but the mystery was driving me crazy. During my 3 a.m. patrol, I used my master key to unlock the security gate. The store was exactly as you'd expect an abandoned department store to look. Clothing racks covered in dust, empty shelves, scattered debris. But the mannequins were pristine, like they'd been maintained and repositioned regularly. I walked through the displays with my flashlight, examining the mannequins more closely. They were incredibly realistic, detailed facial features, natural hair, even individual eyelashes. Some of them were so lifelike that I found myself expecting them to blink or move. In the children's section, I found something that made me extremely uncomfortable. A mannequin family, arranged around a small play table. Mother, father, and 2 children. But instead of the usual neutral expressions, these mannequins seemed to be smiling. Not the bland, generic smile of typical display figures, but genuine expressions of happiness, and they were all looking directly at where I was standing. I completed my examination and left the store, locking the gate behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched as I walked away. The next night, the mannequin family was gone, not moved to a different location within the store, completely gone. The play table was still there, along with the children's clothing displays, but the 4 mannequins had vanished entirely. I searched the entire store during my next several shifts. The missing mannequins were nowhere to be found inside Brennan's, but I started seeing them elsewhere in the mall. During my 2 a.m. patrol, I caught a glimpse of a figure walking through the food court area. When I investigated with my flashlight, I found one of the missing mannequins, the father figure, standing at one of the tables like he was waiting for service. But when I returned 20 minutes later, he was gone. Over the next week, I encountered the missing mannequins throughout the mall, always in different locations, always positioned like they were engaged in normal human activities, shopping at other stores, sitting in the corridor, seating areas, even standing at the information kiosk like they were reading the directory. They were exploring the mall. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe someone was playing an elaborate prank. Maybe the property management company was moving the mannequins for reasons I didn't understand. Maybe I was having some kind of psychological breakdown from working alone at night. But the evidence was too consistent, too detailed to dismiss. The mannequins were moving on their own, Last week, I discovered the truth about what happened to my predecessor. I was reviewing old security footage, trying to find evidence of who might be moving the mannequins, when I found recordings from the night before the previous guard quit. The footage showed him doing his regular patrol around 1 a.m. As he walked past Brennan's, he stopped and stared into the store for several minutes. Then he unlocked the gate and went inside. The cameras couldn't see into the store interior, but 20 minutes later, he emerged looking visibly shaken. He went straight to the security office and didn't come out for the rest of his shift. But here's the disturbing part. In the footage from later that night, I could see him walking through the mall corridors during his 4 a.m. patrol, except he was moving wrong, too stiff, too mechanical, like his joints weren't working properly. And in the final footage from 6 a.m., he was standing in the main corridor surrounded by the mannequin family. He was perfectly still, arms at his sides, staring straight ahead with the same blank expression as the display figures. The footage ended when the day shift arrived. By then, both the guard and the mannequins were gone. He never came back to work. When management tried to contact him, they discovered his apartment was empty. No forwarding address, no explanation, like he'd simply vanished. I think I know what happened to him. The mannequins aren't just moving around the mall randomly. They're recruiting. They're looking for people to join their collection, and they've chosen me as their next target. Tonight, the mannequin family was waiting outside the security office when I arrived for work. All 4 of them, standing in a line, facing the door. When I approached, they turned and walked toward Brennan's, looking back at me like they wanted me to follow. I'm not supposed to finish this shift. I can feel it. They've been patient, letting me observe them, letting me understand what they are. But now they want me to join them. I can hear them moving through the mall right now, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, getting closer to the security office. The mannequin children are outside my door. I can see their shadows under the gap. They're whispering something, but I can't make out the words. The door handle is turning. I don't think I'm going to make it to 7 a.m. If they find this report, don't send anyone else to work the night shift. The mannequins are still waiting for new recruits, and now they know that people will keep coming.